Phase two now, the Team Obama's assault on the Second Amendment. The latest shot, a congressional gun violence task force made up of only Democrats.
I think the most important thing to do, as I indicated a minute ago, is to extend background check requirements across the board federally. There's really no reason not to do that. 90% of the American people want that. We have evidence that it does affect diversions of guns to criminals, and it will help a variety of states reduce their levels of gun violence. So I think that is clearly the top priority. I think the magnitude of the benefit that you get from that, however, is directly correlated with whether you raise standards for legal gun ownership.
Now, here's just one of the problems law-abiding Americans face right now. A new bill called, quote, denying firearms and explosives to dangerous terrorists, unquote. It would, nice name, by the way, it would ostensibly beef up background checks, but it would also give broad power to the unelected Attorney General, as in the radical Loretta Lynch. She, along with the ideological Obama agenda, would become sole arbiter in many cases of the Second Amendment and who should possess firearms. Guns in the hands of good people, average Americans, are not the problem. Bad guys with black market guns are the problem. Joining me now from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and gun rights advocate John Lott. John, president comes out and says these mass shootings that take place in our country once in a while don't happen in other civilized nations around the country, around the world, I should say. That is patently false, is it not?
It's a pretty bizarre statement, but as he said, he keeps on making that claim every time that there's a mass public shooting in the United States. You know, last week he made it from Paris, France. Paris had just suffered less than a month earlier in November a horrible mass public shooting in which 129 people were killed and over 360 people were wounded. But Europe has had several of the worst mass public shootings. You look at Norway, for example, in 2011, they had 67 people killed with a gun. Others were killed with bombs. And you had 110 other people who were wounded. You look at school shootings. 3 of the 4 worst K through 12 school shootings in the world have occurred in Europe. 2 of those have occurred in Germany since 2000. So, you know, if you look at it, a rate of mass public shootings or the rate of fatalities for mass public shootings, the United States ranks about 9th just compared to European countries. And there are many countries in Africa and in parts of Southeast Asia that have much, much worse problems with mass public shootings or bombings, for that matter.
What Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, the whole lot, I think, realize is one of the reasons the framers of the Constitution put the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights is, yes, personal protection, but also to keep a tyrannical government, these are out-of-control politicians, at bay. Is it not?
Well, sure. I mean, we just had the American Revolution. The first skirmish in that was in Lexington and Concord, where British troops were trying to go and seize colonists' arms and their supplies. So, I mean, it was something very fresh in their mind, and it's not too surprising that they would include that in the Bill of Rights.
You wrote the book back in 1998, More Guns, Less Crime, and your point is, I believe, tell me what your point is, but I think it is that a well-armed America is a secure America.
Right, yeah, the 3rd edition of the book just came out in 2010 from the University of Chicago Press. But look, you can deter criminals with higher arrest rates or higher conviction rates or longer prison sentences, but the fact that would-be victims might also be able to go and defend themselves can also make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crimes. And so much of this debate focuses only on the potential cost, but not also the benefits from guns. So, for example, in the lead-in piece that you had, they were pushing so-called expanded background checks. Well, there are lots of issues with that. One is that they don't talk about is that in New York, the expanded background checks add about $80 to the cost of transferring a gun. In Colorado, it's about $60. In California, it's also about $80. That may not stop you or I from being able to go and buy a gun, but my research finds it's basically poor minorities, who, particularly blacks, who live in high crime urban areas, who benefit the most from being able to protect themselves. And an $80 tax, essentially, on gun purchases can make a real difference between whether or not a poor person is able to go and afford that or not. And there are other problems with it, too. Virtually everybody who gets stopped by these background checks is a false positive. You know, the president goes and claims that we have over 2 million dangerous or prohibited people have been stopped from buying guns because of background checks, but he's simply wrong. What he should say is that there have been 2 million initial denials, and probably about 99% of those are law-abiding people who simply had names similar to people that they really wanted to stop.
John, I'm running out of time, but I got to ask you, is it your suspicion, like it is mine, that in Obama's final 13 months in office, he's going to put pedal to the metal on some kind of unilateral action against the Second Amendment?
Well, his big impact that's going to be long-term is going to be the federal judges that he's put on. He's put on about half the federal judges, and they're very strongly against private ownership of guns. But he's doing other things, like Social Security, for example. He's been talking about putting in an executive order that would ban people who have been getting help with their finances, who get Social Security, from being able to go and legally own guns. I have an 80-some-year-old mom my sister helps her take care of her computer, paying the bill, because my mom hates to use computers. And she is under Obama's rules, because she has legal authority to do that. My mom would be banned from being able to own a gun as a result of that.
Well, I'll tell you another thing, John, we have to do in this country collectively. We have to line up against these sheriffs in these various counties across the country who are prohibiting law-abiding, clean, I'm talking felony record, clean Americans from having a CCW, a concealed carry permit. That will deter criminals as well. John, thank you for joining us. Coming up next, Trump towers and Rubio slams Cruz as the Daily Ledger continues.